Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, exclusively for the PlayStation 5. One of the biggest games of the year when it comes to the PlayStation 5 has finally arrived, the brand new Ratchet and Clank video game. The story, of course, follows Ratchet and Clank, the perilous heroes that we've witnessed go to battle with Dr. Nefarious time and time again. And of course that occurs once again after a celebration gone wrong results in dimensional shifts, rifts, and time warping. This not only separates Ratchet and Clank, but also introduces a new character, a new playable character in Rivet, a fellow Lombax that is stuck in a world where Dr. Nefarious actually became the ruler, the emperor of the entire world. With Dr. Nefarious as the ruler of the world, it is up to Ratchet, Rivet, and Clank to find and repair the Dimensionator that Clank made that caused this whole fiasco once again to Dr. Nefarious's hands. Of course, this being a Ratchet and Clank game, this is a 3D shooter, platformer, action adventure spectacular, where you are able to go throughout these worlds and not only shoot enemies, but also jump from different designated areas, utilizing equipment that you're granted as the story progresses, such as moon boots that actually allow you to go from one destroyed area to another, or simply hovering throughout a desert wasteland. In terms of weaponry, you are gifted a lot of opportunities to not only get currency pretty early in the game, but also some very unique weapons. Some of my favorites include Mr. Fungi, which is a projectile that you throw and turns into a laser shooting mushroom that hovers. There's also a sprinkler that actually freezes enemies in grass. It doesn't take long to build up your arsenal, and it will be one of those things where it's up to the player. If they want to mix and match, you can use the weapon wheel to select any weapon at any time during the battle, and it will slow down the action so you're able to choose what you want to choose without having to worry about being shot or even killed. When it comes to confrontations with the enemies, it is chaotic, it is kinetic, it is frenetic, and it is beautiful as you're dodging, jumping, shooting, and of course using the time rifts. Now, this is one of the biggest draws when it comes to Rift Apart. Because of the story and the narrative, you're allowed to actually utilize portals that will transport you to different parts of the arena during a battle, or just simply when you're moving throughout a world. Unfortunately, the actual premise sounds a lot better than the execution when it comes to these time rifts, especially when it comes to battle. The way it was initially presented in the trailers, with the utilization of the time rifts, was the fact that you could go from one part of an arena into another, but it could also change the entire map. You could go into a different actual planet or realm and pull your enemies into it, and maybe even get an advantage or disadvantage depending on where you go. Instead, it's just usually going from one point of an arena to another in the most simplest sense of the word. There are moments where that happens in regards of going from one map to another during a battle, but those are scripted moments. And it's kind of unfortunate because I thought the time rift, especially when it came to battles, would be more dynamic and more really necessary in terms of handling hordes of enemies, but it's something that I rarely have to use because, one, the game is pretty easy even on normal difficulty, and two, it just feels like it kind of takes away the flow of a battle, especially when you're just warped to another section and have to wait for the enemies to come your way, or they may even shoot you before you can even recognize what direction they're coming from. There are several different types of platforming sections, be it the ability to wall run, utilizing the gadgets as I mentioned that you're afforded to dash across open areas, and even specifically made sections where you have to take control of, say, Clank, and lead a bunch of digital clones out of the way of saws and hammers and everything else that's trying to kill them. The one thing that is definitely a plus when it comes to this game is the variety of things you'll be able to do during the course of the game, as I mentioned, be it the shooting, be it the combat, the platforming, or specific sections where you're mixing everything together. Now, I will note when it comes to Ratchet and Rivet, the fact of the matter is that Rivet is not her own character. From a narrative presentation, from a vocal presentation, yes, she is completely different from Ratchet, but from a gameplay perspective, she is just a Ratchet skin. That's it. Right down to the way she carries herself in battle, to the weaponry, no matter what you have on her, it is Ratchet. There's no differentiating the two other than the fact that they look different, but they play exactly the same. So for those who were getting excited about the idea of playing as really a different version of Ratchet, you do not get that here. As per the norm with a Ratchet & Clank game, there are a plethora of collectibles, and a lot of these collectibles actually tie into the overall either unlockables or armor system. From a mission perspective, a majority of the game is very similar to what you've expected from a Ratchet & Clank game. I love the fact that the worlds are more open again. One of the biggest things that they have is side missions that open up after the second world. These side missions are plentiful. They add a lot to certain characters, especially many NPCs that you meet along the way, but they don't feel overbearing. They don't feel long-winded, even if they're just fetch quests. Though the missions are as what you would expect from a Ratchet & Clank game, I will say that the boss battles are definitely lacking, and not in terms of presentation or enjoyment, but in number. After the first couple of levels, you don't get that many boss battles. I'm on the 5th planet, and I've only had 2 boss battles. I was expecting a boss battle per planet. Instead, after the first 2 boss battles, I've been gifted the ability to fight a whole bunch of hordes of enemies in medium to big arenas, including one mini-boss that keeps showing up time and time again as a way to really give a challenge without presenting an overall big boss battle. From a technical aspect, Ratchet & Clank is actually somewhat of a mixed bag right now. Graphically, sonically, just from a frame rate perspective, the game is wonderful. It is definitely a 9th generation experience if there ever was one, especially this early in the console's life cycle. It works really, really well. It looks really, really good, and it sounds really, really fantastic until the game decides that it doesn't want to cooperate. After the 3rd planet, I had the game crash several times, and I mean hard crashes, where I would have to restart the game. Thankfully, there is a very intuitive checkpoint system. A majority of the time, the progress I lost was pretty much just seconds. And then there are also just the random bugs and glitches like characters getting stuck in walls, and one of the more interesting ones was during a side mission where the game got to one specific point and everything just slowed down. But then the game wouldn't go back into normal speed as it would any other time, and it's something that just would have to work itself out. Overall, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart is definitely a fantastic game. It's one of those games that doesn't do anything really spectacular. It doesn't do anything really revolutionary, even with the Time Rift implementation, but it is so enjoyable. It is so fun when the game wants to cooperate with you, when it technically wants to cooperate with you. It's one of those games that if you've enjoyed the previous Ratchet & Clank games, if you've enjoyed 3D platformers that happen to be third-person shooters with very cartoonish and animated characters, this is definitely the game for you, but I will preface this by saying I would wait, not until it goes on sale, but until a few more patches have been released and you're able to play the game without worrying about it crashing or corrupting your saves or just doing something out of the ordinary that you wouldn't expect from a game in this generation to do, especially something so linear and not necessarily so open world and just prone to a lot of bugs as, say, something like Cyberpunk 2077. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, exclusively for the PlayStation 5. Now, if you don't mind, I have to go and stop this gigantic drill from destroying a planet because a person from the past has actually warned people in the future of what could happen in the past if they turn the drill on. But of course, I'm being shot at by gigantic robots and people that do not like me. But I'll tell you this, if they keep on shooting at me, I will use my flower power to make them say, "Oh, Lordy."